Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Jerry, I will just turn it right over to you.
Perfect. I should be sharing my screen now. Let me know if that has come up.
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. My name is Jerry Ilar. I'm the manager for family and community supports in the Office of Engagement and Partnerships. And I'm leading an ESSER, or Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief Fund initiative, where we use our pandemic grant money from the past couple years to address math learning loss. And so we have called this initiative Dream with Families for the remainder of this year. And so you'll learn a little bit about how you can support Dream with Families or our schools, or just in supporting family engagement or family math engagement at all of our elementary schools or a subset of our schools. And so you'll hear from our math team as well as from me on our engagement partnership side. And so what we'll cover are introductions, depending on how many people join. We may ask you to come off mute or just share in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with. You'll hear about our math initiatives at DC Public Schools, and then hear how Dream with Families is supporting our math initiatives, and then thinking about opportunities on the horizon for all of our vendors and partners in our elementary schools. And then we'll have time for Q&A and just additional next steps. So for introductions, if you feel comfortable either chatting, taking your mic off, or chatting in the chat box, you can say your name and title, your partner organization that you're representing, affiliated schools or neighborhood or wards that you work with, and then think about your favorite family game that you played as a kid or growing up with your family now. And so starting us off, my name is Jerry Ilar. I've been with DC Public Schools since 2018, been in DC in the education sector, working at education nonprofits since 2012, originally from Michigan. And now I am leading this new line of work in our office as a manager for family and community supports. And so the game that I think about growing up that I used to play with my family has been Scrabble. So a little bit of literacy and scoring with the math. And then a second like board game that we always played was Life. And so getting around the board of life and trying to choose like the mansion, the nice car, and how many family members we would have. And so we would play that as a family around the holidays or just whenever we had downtime. And so you can choose any game, whether it's a card game, video game, freeze tag, anything like that, or a board game. So if people want to come off mute, I'll give you a second. I see a couple people. You can either share in the chat or just come off mute and share who you are, where you're representing, and then also your favorite family game.
Okay, I'll go first. It's Robert Saints here. I'm with a community scholar. The school I'm working with the most at the moment is Bowen in Southwest. I worked originally with Capitol Hill Montessori and Noise Elementary School. So hopefully I can get back to them after the pandemic took a little bit of a hit there. Community scholars started off as a bit of a hobby, but it gained some success in Bowen, and so that's our focus at the moment with volunteer tutors. Board game growing up, Scrabble as well. It's a little tricky in my current family. My wife is Polish, and I have a 11-year-old daughter, so we're sort of learning Scrabble all over again. Learning the English language is really good with Scrabble. Thank you.
Awesome. Bowen and Noise are actually one of our Dream with Family schools, and Bowen is doing a family math night tonight. So
yes.
Would anyone else like to join? Share out?
I can share mine in the chat. I am Katie. I am a coordinator of partnerships and donations with DCPS. And my step siblings and I used to play a card game called Anomia, which is where you have certain categories, and you have to race to name something in that category. So we got very competitive. There was a lot of yelling, but it was very fun. And then also, when you said video games, my sister and I played DDR a lot growing up. I don't know if we would be experts still to this day, but I remember at the time thinking I was top of the DDR game.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Kaila, and she will lead our next couple slides and after her quick introduction.
Thanks, Jerry. So my name is Kaila Ramsey Garza. I am the Director of Elementary Math and Science. So all things kindergarten through 5th grade math and science are in our wheelhouse of our team. This is my 14th year in DCPS. So I've been in schools for a really long time, and I've partnered with probably likely some of your organizations, and now I'm sitting in the central office seat for games. I grew up playing a lot of Uno, but we had like some very specific family rules, which I'm realizing are not universal when I try to play with other people. So just naming, there was definitely some like Ramsey household interpretation of Uno rules, like can you play a card when you have a plus? It's a whole thing. And so I have a 5-year-old. I'm a mom of a kindergartner, and he really loves this game called Set, which is like really fun. You try to make matches where there's only one of each kind of, attribute in a group, or they all have to have the same attribute. So it's like a fun game to get, you're just thinking about like logic and stretching your mind. So, it's a little bit mathy overtly, but a lot of fun. So thank you for joining today, and for those that are going to join and watch this recording online. Jerry referenced a Dream with Families initiative, but the dream part in DREAM, as we know schools love a good acronym, is related to our DCPS Road to Equity and Achievement in Mathematics. And so this is a 5-year strategic plan thinking about how do we revamp and reimagine our math education as a district, both in response to some district trends and national trends that predate the pandemic, but certainly exacerbated by the pandemic in terms of the impact of math learning during that time. So thinking about what are the high level things that go into the dream, so that then we can talk about how we work and partner with families alongside that. So the dream is a pre-K through 12th grade, like kind of spans all classes, all types of schools. We really start with our youngest learners, and in particular for our pre-K 3 and 4 students, having an actual math curriculum that they use that's really centered around, kid-friendly, student-friendly questions and curiosity and joy and math. So really starting our youngest learners off from the jump, like tapping into some of that natural curiosity to make sure they have a strong foundation when they come into us in kindergarten. So that's really our focus there. Jerry, if you click, the next bucket is around really thinking about that kindergarten through 2nd grade lane, although this does continue throughout elementary. Like, how do we have kids understand what numbers are, how we put them together in different ways, what are the operations, like what does that mean, and really having that floor of that number sense, that strong math foundation to build on that will carry them forward. And so some things we're thinking about are, how do we just have like one-on-one conversations where we're asking kids to just talk about what they think about the math problem, and we're really just gaining insight. We do a lot of reading, running records where we listen to kids read and we get a lot of intel about what they know and what they don't, but have not historically done as much of that in the math space. And so how can we have these one-on-one conversations where students' thinking is made explicit, and then we can then respond with targeted, individualized intervention to help support both with their strengths and their areas of need. Again, with the mantra of like, if we can get in early and get them really strong, then we can set them on a path that will propel them forward. Okay, so once we do that in early elementary, the next bucket is really thinking about how do we set up every kid in DCPS for success with middle school Algebra 1. Historically, this was something, taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade was something that was reserved typically for the highest achieving students in the district. What that then means is that then their high school, schedule is freed up for more advanced creative coursework. And so if that is something that we say is of value for students, that they have this algebra experience in middle school, how can we make sure that every student is set up for that success? And really that starts all the way in pre-K, right, that we're building on, and really thinking about just like a deep understanding of the math. So that, last bullet, when they get to high school, we really are expanding opportunities to think about how are we studying math in a way that is relevant to our really changing world. So how do we have financial literacy and an awareness of our finances? How are we like leveraging the data technology world that we're in? How do we prepare students to be helpful consumers of data, that they understand it, that they're not, they're able to flag misinformation in this world that we live in. And so we're really thinking about how we're just building on this pathway over time so that our students graduate not just with the competency, but also the creativity and that joy and love of mathematics, so that regardless of what career or community or college that they want to move into, that they have that, and that math is not acting as a gatekeeper that limits students' future opportunities. So that's like our dream in a nutshell. Jerry, I don't know if we want to pause for questions. We can do the next slide maybe, and then if people want to drop questions in the chat, I'm happy to stick around and answer. So, okay, that's the what. Now we're leaning into like, how do we do this? And we're really thinking about this from our student perspective, from our family perspective, and then from our school and educator perspective. So how do we value and deepen educator expertise? Like if you're going to teach this math, you yourself need to know it inside and out. And so how do we lift that up as a value and support that in our work? How do we also ensure that we're fostering classrooms that are joyful, where math is not dreaded and traumatic like maybe it was for some of us growing up, but rather a moment of joy, and also that joy and that way the math block happens is consistent. So no matter what classroom and what school you are, in which part of our city, you have the same access to this cohesive, creative math experience, right? So really centering students, seeing themselves, you can see my background, as like math people. We want people to say like, I am a math person. We no longer say I'm not a math person, right? Like we want everyone to identify in that way, especially with our families. And so that brings me to the last bullet around how do we partner with families as students' best and first teachers, but also who themselves have experience with math. And we have heard over and over again questions about this new math or what are they doing with math? And so how do we both make math accessible to our families, but then also so that they can help continue to instill this like love and creativity of math throughout the day and expand that outside the classroom, right, into the community. So really going with our students, our educators, and our families in mind. And Jerry is going to take some time to go deeper into that, like partnering with families with this one project that we're leaning into for that. So that's an overview of the dream, right? The DCPS Road to Equity and Achievement in Math. And then Jerry's going to talk about like what that means to dream with families.
Awesome. Before we move on, just want to pause for any questions for people who are on. And if you do have questions, feel free throughout the presentation to raise your hand or to put them in the chat, and we'll answer them as we go on. Well, thank you, Kaila. So here is a preview of all the 22 schools that we chose for our Dream with Families project or initiative. And so we have split them up into two cohorts where 16 schools are receiving additional K-2 specific supports through educator workshops, and then also a virtual tool through one of our partners. And then another 6 who are focusing on 3-5 educator workshops. And so you can see them, they're spread across the district. We did choose all Title I schools, and I'll share kind of how that came to fruition. But we worked with a ton of central office teams to develop what should our focus on our ESSER funding be. And so one of the initiatives that we saw was that there was some math student academic loss from the pandemic. And so math was one theme or one area that we really want to focus on. And that a prevalent theme was parents didn't know how to teach or how to work with their students with the new math, and how it can be daunting or how it's changed so much. And so what could we do now to kind of fight the loss through the pandemic and support families through this new initiative? So that leads us to our goal: address math learning loss due to the pandemic by providing partnerships and resources supports for both educators and families. We really want to build families' confidence and love in learning math. So taking the 3 themes and aligning it to what Kaila shared in the couple slides before, and thinking some parents and some families think like they're not a math person. So if we start hearing that from students, and if or parents start sharing that with themselves or with their educators, like we want to fight that stigma and make sure that everyone is a math person, that you can find joy in everything you do, whether it's reading, you can, or any type of activity going to and from school or just everyday life, that math is all around us and that everyone is a math person no matter what you do, whether you work closely with numbers or you don't. So we really want to support and create a culture within our schools that families feel comfortable working with their students, and also working with their teachers or their partner teachers, and loving math. And so with our collaboration, this is a new body of work. So unfortunately, it is only 1 year left since ESSER, the Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief Fund. All that funding will end at the end of this fiscal year, which is September 2024. And so we are finishing and wrapping this up. And so we worked with a couple of key stakeholders, central offices, to determine what partners and what supports are best needed. And then we also developed a plan of which schools to kind of act as our first batch of schools, and then how do we kind of stream or do that to all of our elementary schools. And so we created a Dream with Families initiative, and focusing on our Title I schools, and then bringing in additional supports, whether they're partners or math manipulative kits or resources. And so the school eligibility, we want to identify 15 to 25 schools to apply, and then we focused on Title I elementary schools. We focused on the Park math results in 2022, iReady math data in 2022, and then every year we do a panorama survey for all students, for all educators and staff members of DCPS, and then our families as well. And so we focus on the family portion to kind of gauge a baseline of how well a school was doing in terms of their family engagement. And so we needed at least a base level, that if in order for us to bring supports to a school, that they have some type of base where families are involved, whereas opposed to schools who are still struggling, and we know that they do need additional supports around family engagement. We knew that supports wouldn't be as effective with at least a baseline level of, okay, this is how we engage with students or our families. This is how we're building a culture with our educators to support family engagement throughout the year. And then from that, we had our 22 schools chosen that you saw earlier, all around DCPS or all across the district. And so what the supports that are being provided are workshops and coaching for school leaders around family engagement, and specializing that around math. And then professional development for educators on supporting families with learning math at home, virtual tools and resources for families. And then at the end or middle of September, we were able to distribute 6,500 math manipulative kits, math read aloud books for students, and then also activity kits for each of the schools for family math nights. And so this is kind of where the timeline is right now. We are wrapping up fall 2023, and a majority of our schools have started or have planned a family math night. And then throughout winter 2023 to 2024, there are ongoing workshops and then family math night events and opportunities for partners, for vendors, and then for families to engage with their school. And then in spring, we are going to do a district-wide family math conference for everyone, for all of our elementary schools, not just with our Dream with Families. And then summer 2024 will be a closing out evaluation of how our partners did, what supports worked, getting feedback from our teachers, from our schools, from our school leaders, from families and students, and then building a recommendation for how we can apply this to all of our elementary schools, not just with our Dream with Family schools. And hopefully this can live on, whether it's in our family engagement department or with the math team as well, as we begin planning for the next 4 to 5 years. So Dream with Families on the Horizon, there are 3 areas where vendors or our school partners can be involved with. And so our first one are family math nights. There have actually been a couple that have occurred in the past month and a half, whether they're with Dream with Families or just an elementary school engaging with their family members. So they're roughly 2-hour evening events to bring in families to learn about the math curriculum and activities you can do at home. And it's a way for meeting parents, meeting family members, caregivers, and also just a way of making math fun at home. And so that families can take that back home with them, with their students or with their children. Dream with Families story time. And so we're going to start a parent university session in early 2024 on how you can make reading fun and including and involving math into nightly rituals if you do a story time. And so hopefully this will be a fun district event where we can get the chancellor to read a story time on live stream through Twitter or Instagram, through one of our math theme reading books, and then get everyone to tune in from 8 to 8:15 or 8 to 8:30 once a week or every other week, and then having other principals or educators so that a student can say like, oh, that's my teacher or that's my principal reading this book and like I really want to be involved. Or if you have suggestions on other VIPs, if we had someone from the Mystics or from Nats or the Commanders. So that's our idea with Dream with Family Storytime. The Dream with Families conference is taking a couple of iterations, one being super academic and just being super strict in terms of like having sessions for parents and sessions for educators. But after seeing a couple of family math nights, how can we make more engaging activities for students using some of the tools that our schools have received, but also having just 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 solid family engagement workshops, whether it's how do you talk about math with your students at home, or how do you get help from your educators or from your partner teachers on working with your students on or with their children on math at home. And so we want to support families as much as possible, but also make sure it's bite-sized and usable, because sometimes offering too many sessions or too much can be overwhelming. Even for me, as I'm learning more about like different math initiatives and curriculum, I'm like, wow, okay, there's so much to do, like, and I can get overwhelmed by that. And so knowing how can families adjust when they're working with their kids at home. So how can partners support? So you all joined on ways that you are currently working in your schools, but are additional things that can support us as a district or for any other elementary school. So our family math nights, they're ongoing. They will continue for years to come. And so our 6 schools, part of the Dream with Families, have their family math nights. One is actually a parent workshop with C.W. Harris from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And so if you work with any of these schools, sometimes leaders will share like different events, but this is a quick high level view of like what's going on today and tomorrow, because we have a family math night at Amadon Bowen, Randall Highlands tomorrow night, and then a parent workshop at C.W. Harris. But a lot of schools have come asking for math activities. And so we provided the family math activities, and some schools need help with promotion, outreach, getting families to involve. So if you work closely with students or if you work closely with families, like encouraging your students to come to these family math nights so that educators can meet family members or can meet their students and or address any issues that are happening at schools, or just to highlight some of the awesome things that their students are accomplishing within the classroom. A lot of schools will ask for swag items. Even today, we're bringing like central office swag items, supporting and acquiring free food and beverages. So anything to support on the dinner front for families, or even the teachers who are working late nights to support these events. Some schools will ask for volunteers to run the activities. And so most of the schools will have the set activities, but they just need more hands because sometimes there'll be 75 to 100 people coming. And then if you are a partner that works with students, like how do you incorporate math into some of your partner activities? So if like DC scores, like how can you include like soccer, whether it's like distance or like how many times you can kick a ball, depending on like what grade level you're working with. You can add math to any activity so that it kind of gives an example for families to do at home or with their students. Our family math night kits were actually provided from an organization out in California. I will try to add the link here, but I don't think I can copy and paste, but I'll add it towards the end of the chat. The next way that partners can support our Dream with Family Storytime. So there isn't a direct support here, but the big support is like, how can we get more books to schools? How can we get more books to our families and to our students? And so there's that piece. And so there is a couple of links I'll share in the chat. One is our Math by the Book, where we highlighted each grade level book. I think there's one that wasn't part of Math by the Book, but all of these books have workbooks that go along with it. We were able to procure all the books for each kindergartner across the 22 schools. So that's Grandma's Purse, Thanking the Moon, celebrating the Midnight Autumn Moon Festival, for all first graders across the 22 schools. And so help that we'll need once we have our promotional and collateral down is promotional support, VIP suggestions for reading a book, or just incorporating math themed books in partner activities. And so thinking about if you are lab, like choosing books that have a math component to it, or if you need assistance with some workbooks or leading questions in including math while reading a book, we'll have those supports for families as well. And then the third piece will be our Dream with Families conference in spring of 2024. And so it's going to be similar to our block party, but every activity will have a math component or a math activity. And then other ways that we're thinking about it is including partnering with other organizations, maybe doing a passport or like money in terms of like each student will have like $10 and then purchasing like $1 to do a game or activity and using that for like some of our upper grades. So there's ways that we'll be working with the math team and then also with our educators that are Dream with Family Schools to help plan this event. But it's really supposed to be a hands-on family fun math day, not just a conference and sitting in a session or sitting in a classroom, but we will have sessions on to support families or parents to working with their students on the new math or how to ask feedback from educators and how to feel comfortable supporting their students at home. And so swag items, food and beverages, family math activities, notable VIPs are ways to support. And then obviously volunteer support if we're getting more than 1,500 to 2,000 people or families coming out to these events. So I threw out a lot out there, but if you are interested in becoming more involved, let me drop in the bit.ly link, or if Abby is able to do that.
Yeah, I can do that.
You can fill out this quick form. It's 2 to 3 questions, and we can't guarantee exact placement or involvement in every school, but this gives us an idea of where we can insert you or what supports you can provide for any of our schools, whether they're Dream with Families or any of our elementary schools. But I will end off there with any questions that you all may have. And then our contact information is below. So Jerry, Jerry.Ilar at k12.dc.gov. If you have any other thoughts or ideas, or if there's a school that you really want to become more involved with from the 22 schools, you can connect with me. Or if you have additional supports, and then anything math related or even STEM related is for Kaila Ramsey at k12.dc.gov.
Well, thank you, Jerry and Kaila. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to share about Dream and Dream with Families. I think it's a really nice opportunity to bring together families and partners in support of, our district strategic goal around increasing math achievement. So we don't always have that opportunity to work in such nice collaboration across all of those groups. So this was particularly relevant. So I really appreciate it. And yeah, if folks don't have questions, we can give you back 30 minutes in in your day, and we'll be posting the recording for anyone that wasn't able to join today. And yeah, otherwise, I hope everybody has a great rest of their day.